We are in the midst of, in the beginning actually, of the book of Shmuel, the second book of Shmuel, and chapter 2, verse 1. And we find ourselves after the death of King Saul and three of his children, three of the four children. And the news came to David, and David eulogized one of the famous, the most famous eulogy, I guess, in Tanakh. David eulogizes Saul and his son Jonathan, and that's where we find ourselves. So. And so what would one expect? David was outside of the land of Israel. He ran away from fearful of being caught by Saul. So he was right outside a neighboring nation, the Philistines, right? And he was sitting there and was not for long, for a few months, 6 months, I think, 6 months, something like that. So now that Saul died, he was in a dilemma. What should he do next? Now, he knew he had the information, the privileged information that really nobody else in the world, or maybe his brothers did know, but other than that, nobody else knew that he was anointed as a king. He was destined to, was picked by Shmuel and crowned by Shmuel to be the next king. But it was a secret. Nobody knew it. Jonathan and Saul, who were now deceased, had an idea. They thought, they suspected that he is the next one. But nobody really knew at this point. So now he's the sole person, because Shmuel himself, who made the decision and crowned him, is no longer with us. So now what's David's next move? And here we see a pattern, a continuing pattern of David, of total humility, of total not being hungry for power, not looking to be a king, not looking to get the power and the authority and to throw his weight around. So he, which was not the case with, definitely not with the kings after him, and also wasn't the case with King Saul really before him. He consulted with God on every move. So see, so after this whole story, after King Saul died, Vayishal David ba'Hashem. So God is asking of David is asking of God a question. Now, what do you mean he's asking for God a question? He didn't have a phone to pick up and say, God, how you doing? What to do? So, but we do know that the breastplates were under his jurisdiction. When he ran away, there was one of the Kohanim that were left after the massacre in the city of the priests, the city of Kohanim Nov. So his name was Aviatar. He remained. He's the sole survivor from that massacre. Saul wiped out the city. So he went with David. And David promised him protection. So he ran away with David, and he took with him the breastplate. So now we have a Kohen, and we have the breastplates. And this is how David was able to communicate with Hashem and ask him a question. So he's asking God a question, Le'emor, Ha'ele be'achat harei Yehudah. Should I go back? Should I go to one of the cities of Yehudah? Should I go back home? Basically, not home, but which should I go to a city? Should I go to one of the cities of Yehudah? And God answers him, Vayomer Hashem elav ale, yeah, you should go. Then he asks again another question, Vayomer David, Ana ele, which city should I go to? Vayomer Hebron. So God answers, you should go to Hebron. And so why didn't he ask the like, it's like two questions. She could have been, should I go, which city should I go to? So why did he have to ask, should I go to a city in Yehudah, and which city should I go to? So we know from previous encounters with the breastplates, with the Chod and Choshen, that it can answer only one question at a time. And the question must be as defined as possible. So he asked in steps, and he got it. He got the answers in steps. So he was told by Hashem to go to the city of Hebron. Now, soon we will go, and this is one of the main discussions today, is why the city of Hebron. One would think that he should go to the capital city, which would the capital city of where Saul was, or to Yerushalayim, where the capital city of David is going to be. Why go to the city of Hebron? We'll get in a minute. We'll talk about that, but let's just finish the thought, finish the motion here. Vayal Sham David. So David immediately is listening and following the order, suggestion of God, or the answers of God, and he goes there to Hebron. Now, let's think about what it means, okay? For 2.5 years, or a little less than 2.5 years, about 2 years, he was haunted. He was chased. He needed to run away. Maybe not 2.5, maybe 2 years, maybe 1.5 years. I forgot exactly the timing. But for a nice period of time, he was chased by David. And he was the victim of what today is being called fake news. The people of Saul were spreading the news that David is after his own, he wants to take over, and he's a threat. Even though Saul put him as the head of the army, and he was the one that killed Goliath, and he never ever asked anything for himself. He never ever wanted anything. He was always supporting Saul, even when Saul chased him, and even when he through the misery of running in the desert and almost being captured, he was arm's length away from Saul twice and didn't touch him. So nonetheless, the people in Israel were listening to the propaganda that some of Saul's advisors spread, and that is that David is the enemy. And so now Saul is gone. So for David to just come to enter the land is a risky move. But again, he's not doing anything on his own, and if God told him to go, he goes. Now, but he doesn't even hedge, and he doesn't even being careful. You would think if you need to go back to the lion's den after you ran away from it a few months ago, you would just sneak in or go with some. He had 600 people with him that were like a militia that was going around with him. So you would think he would keep the women, the children, he would keep back in a safer location, and he would just go in to see how goes it, and then if he feels safe, he will bring them in. But no, David does not. If God says go, he does not hesitate one bit. And what he said is, he right away took both of his wives. He had 2 wives at the time. והיה שם דוד וגם 2 נשיו, אחינועם הישראלית ואביגיל אשת נבל הכרמלי, and he takes them straight up with him to go back to Israel, to the area of the tribe of Yehudah. ואנשיו אשר עמו, and the people, the militia, right, that came with him, he also brought them. But he didn't bring them for protection. He didn't bring them to be around him. Ishu Beito, he brought all of them. They escaped when they ran away. They also ran away with their wives and children, whoever had. and he put them around in the suburbs and the towns around the city of Hebron to show that he is not afraid. He is not looking for protection. He doesn't. He's not creating, the king's guard, and he was just basically on his own. And then we're going to just read the beginning of the pasuk, and then we'll talk a little bit about Hebron and go back to the end of it. So ויבואו אנשי יהודה וימשכו שם את דוד למלך על בית יהודה. So the people of Yehudah, they did not know what Shmuel promised him, but they felt that David, after the defeat of Saul, the elimination of Saul from the stage, and his sons as well, even though one son was around, and we'll see that fourth son did become a king as well. But the people of Yehudah did not follow the line of Saul, and they crowned David to be the king, but not on the king for all of the Jewish people, because they were just one tribe, but on their own tribe. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about Hebron and what's the whole story of Hebron, and it comes with a nice story which I found fascinating. So, the story goes that in the year 1805, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was at the time in Russia, established a fund, and that fund was for the benefit of the Jews of the land of Israel at the time. There were not many Jewish people in the land of Israel. They were mostly in exile in the 1800s. And the few that were there were scattered in a few cities, in Yerushalayim, in Hebron, in Tveria, in Tzfat, not in basically those 4 cities. And he sent them money. His son did 2 things. He established a whole enclave in Hebron. He sent his daughter to live in the city of Hebron, and he started supporting it in a more innovative way. He is the one that invented the pushke, the tzedakah box. We all have in our house pushkes, right? And where we put money and collect money. And from time to time, we take the box and we send the money to whoever it belongs to, right, or whoever is collecting. So he is the one that invented the pushke, the second Lubavitcher Rebbe, and the money would be collected until that time. People would messengers from the charities would go around and they collect, and when they pass by the city, if you happen to see them and to give them, you gave them. Otherwise, they passed and they're gone. But when you have a pushke at home, you put every day you put a few cents, and after a while you have it collects, and the people themselves sent those pushkes to the destinations. Now, part of the problem in Russia was that in Israel at the time the Turks were ruling over the land of Israel, and the Russians did not have a peaceful relationship with the Turks. So anybody who would send money to the land of Israel, it was a problem. It was helping the Turks. So when it was the Rebbe would collect a lot of money and send it, it's a substantial amount of money. It's big danger. They did it anyway. But when people send pushkas, it's easier because you just send your own individual pushka. It wasn't a lot of money. Anyway, so they established a institution called Kolel Chabad, which was in charge of helping those families who are sitting and learning in Yerushalayim, in Hebron. Now, after a while, in those days, just like in nowadays, when it comes to money, you right away there is a potential for a fight. And over there also became a fight. What happened? The city of Hebron was a smaller city, as it is now. You had in those days about 800 Jewish souls in Hebron, 20,000 in the entire city of Hebron. And in Yerushalayim was a bigger city. You had over there somewhere like 30,000 Jewish people, and the entire city was more like 70,000 or so. So it was a bigger city, and so most of the people lived there. Most of the Jewish community lived in Yerushalayim, and in those days you also had because people did not own a lot of real estate, and definitely not Jews sometimes were not allowed to own real estate. So it was if you were a Jewish person living in the land of Israel, you don't necessarily had an address. So when they needed to send those pushkes, they needed to send the money from the pushkes from Russia to Israel, they needed an address. They needed a reliable address. So then there was a few people who did have the address, and they became in charge of the money. So they would accept all of the payments that would come through the wires, through the mail, and when it became a substantial amount, they would give it out. They would send it to the city of Hebron, to the people who needed to, who the money was intended to. There was no post an organized post in Hebron, so they couldn't send it directly to Hebron. They sent it to Yerushalayim. Soon enough, the person who was receiving the money in Yerushalayim decided that it's more important to support the charity in Yerushalayim, the yeshivas in Yerushalayim, and not in Hebron. And he basically stopped the flow of funds. And it took a while till the word came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Now it was already the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe in Russia, and he raised hell basically. I mean, how dare you? This is not money that you don't have we're just using you as an address. You don't have the privilege to start deciding who the money belongs to. You're supposed to just take the money and transfer it. So they were sending letters to the Rebbe saying that no, you're not allowed to even support the people of Hebron, because the main establishment is Yerushalayim. This is the capital city, and this is where it needs to be. Why am I telling you this whole story? Because as a result of this issue, machloket, the problem with the money, we benefited for knowing the specialness of Hebron. Why Hebron is so special, and why the rabbis of that generation decided to establish a yeshiva in Hebron and not in Yerushalayim first, because of the discussion and the fight and the conflict about the money, they wrote letters describing what is so special about Hebron, which is bringing us to why I'm telling you this story. So what's so special about Hebron? And they mention in this pasuk here that as a proof that Hebron was so special, that David, even though he was destined to build, to rule in the city of Yerushalayim, went to Hebron first for 7 years. And he was in Hebron first, not because he couldn't go to Yerushalayim, because Yerushalayim was available. King Saul was not around, and there was nobody else ruling in Yerushalayim, and he could have gone there first. But he was told to go to Hebron. What is special about Hebron? So two things. I'll say first of all the second thing, because that's really amazing. I'll start with the first one. So what's special about Hebron is as follows. Hebron used to be called Kiryat Arba, the city of four, because it was established by 4 giants, or 4 people, whatever. After our forefathers were buried over there, it became Hebron. Hebron means to connect, chaver, right? To lechaber, to connect. What does Hebron connect? Our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they created the prayers. The three prayers that Jews pray every day, Shachris, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. Shachris was created by Abraham, Mincha by Yitzchak, and Ma'ariv by Yaakov. And they are the ones who are connecting our tefillot to Hashem. All of our tefillot, of all of any minyan or any Jew that davens anywhere in the world, is going up to heaven through the city of Hebron. Which is, it's mind-boggling, right? The word tefillah in Hebrew also means to connect, litfol, to connect. So this connection is coming through that connection, through the connections of our forefathers. So when we daven here, wherever we are, we daven, our prayer is going straight up to through the city of Hebron to heaven. Now, the second thing that was revealed is that the gate of, there are 7 gates to heaven, to Olam Haba, 7 gates, and the first gate is in the cave of the patriarchs, Me'arat HaMachpelah. That is the cave that is the entrance, the petach, the gate, the doorway to enter Olam Haba, to enter heaven. And all of the souls, whenever someone dies and the soul leaves the body, the soul doesn't go straight to heaven, it goes through Hebron and through Me'arat HaMachpelah, and that's where it goes to heaven. Now, what happens here is David, is his mission, a mission of a king, is to connect the people to God. That was the whole idea of a king. It's not like a king in the world is just to rule, is to win wars, is to be in charge of the people. But it's not to connect. That's not the mission of a normal king. A king in the Tanakh, a Jewish king, their mission is to connect the people to God. So when they need to connect the people to God, they need the best way is to use the tools, to use the gates, to use the vehicles that were put in place in order to connect us to Hashem. And that is Hebron. That is all the key to Hebron, to the city of Hebron, is that connection. And that's the reason he went straight to Hebron, because in order for him to perform his mission as a king properly, he needs to connect. And in order to connect, he needs to be in Hebron. So he sat for 7 years in the city of Hebron to connect. That's the reason he went there. Okay, so Vayavo Anshe Yehudah. So they made him a king over there. Now, why only Anshe Yehudah and not everyone? What happened with everyone else? So that is also something very, very interesting. The story goes, as we know, that when Yaakov, he had to run away, right? He ran away from home because Esau was contemplating to kill him, and he went to Lavan, to Syria, over there, Iraq, Syria, and he was there for 20 years. And over there, he married his wives, and he had all but one child. And then he was making his way back, and on his way back, as he was trying to cross the Jordan River, he had a fight with the angel, right? The angel was trying to fight with him and prevent him. The angel of Esau was trying to prevent him from going back. And he was able to overcome the angel of Esau, and the angel gave him a blessing. He told him, I'm not releasing you. Yaakov told the angel, I'm not letting you go until you give me a blessing. And so what was the blessing? The blessing was that kings will come from you. Kings will come from you. Now, what do you mean kings will come from you? He had already 11 children. So will come means that it still wasn't born yet, right? The only one that wasn't born yet was Binyamin. So that means that kings will come from Binyamin. And here we had a king that came from Binyamin, that's King Saul. Before that, there was no other king that came from that tribe. But the blessing was kings, multiple. So you need at least two. So the obvious choice would be the son of Saul, who out of the 4 sons, 3 died. So the sole survivor of Saul was a gentleman by the name of Ishbosheth. So he should be the king. So everyone else in the land of Israel were feeling that, that in order for the blessing to become true, and the blessing that the angel gave Yaakov, we need another king from the house of Saul. So they were not really thrilled, and they were not really joining in the crowning of David. The tribe of Yehudah, David was from the tribe of Yehudah. They didn't feel that this is that important, and they were drawn to David and crowned him right there and then. So next, what happens is, David is sitting in Yehudah, in Hebron, and he is the king of the area of the tribe of Yehudah. And the word came to him about the people of Yavesh Gilad, that they actually buried Saul. What's the story over there? So the war that Saul lost was in the north, as we recall, in Mount Gilboa, right, in the Galilee, in the lower Galilee, in Mount Gilboa. And his when they discovered the Philistines, when they discovered his body, they decapitated him, I think, and they hung his body as a display on the walls of the city of Bet Shean. Now, the walls of the city of Bet Shean, the city of Bet Shean was directly on the other side of the Jordan River from the city of Yavesh Gilad. Yavesh Gilad, they were living on the Gilad is in the Jordan side of the on the eastern side of the Jordan River, where modern day Jordan is, and they were very, very dedicated and very, very loyal to Saul. Why? For 2 reasons. First of all, Saul saved them. That was the first war that Saul fought was against the king of Ammon, who decided to take the people to subjugate the people of Yavesh Gilad, because they were the outskirts. They were sort of the last Jewish city, before it's a border city. And it was easy for him to go and capture it, and he wanted to take them. And he said he's going to not only he's going to take them, he's going to humiliate them by making them blind in one eye. He's going to blind every man in the right eye, so they'll know that he's the boss. And so they asked him, no problem, we'll go with you, but give us 7 days. And during those 7 days, they were sending people back home to the land of Israel to ask for help. And the only one that came for their help was Saul, who saved them and fought the war. So they really owed him one, big one. When he died, they actually sent a bunch of people, a bunch of soldiers in the middle of the night to take his body off the gates of the walls of the city of Bet Shean and bury it properly. They also were related. They had family relationship. A lot of the from before that, a lot of the daughters, a lot of the men, when there was at one point a civil war between the tribe of Benjamin and the rest of the tribes, if you recall the story of Pilegesh Bagiva. And most of the tribe of Binyamin was wiped out, except of 600 people. And they needed, in order to not eliminate a a whole tribe from amongst us, they needed to find kalot, brides, to marry them and start the tribe again. And the people of Yavesh Gilad contributed several hundred of those brides. So basically they were married into the tribe of Benjamin, and a lot of the soldiers who died in the war now with Saul were from the tribe of Benjamin, and therefore they were related to the people of Yavesh Gilad. So the people of Yavesh Gilad had several ties to Saul and to his soldiers, and they're the ones that made sure to bury him properly. Now, in those days, when a new king came on board and became a king, the first thing that he did was to eliminate and annihilate all of the previous royal family. Why? Because anyone who tasted royalty, it's hard to, if they lived in the White House, it's very hard for them to not live in the White House anymore, right? When they had all of the privilege of being royalty, it's very difficult for them not to. So even though the father, the king, died, and the family is no longer royalty, the new king didn't want any problems, so they would take the old royal family and wipe them out, and that was the procedure. Now, David doesn't do any of that, right? And providing tremendous respect, continuous respect, as he had to Saul when Saul was alive, he continued to have respect to him and to his family. So the fact that the people of Yavesh Gilad were the ones who took provided burial to Saul and his sons, and in a great respect, that gave them a lot of brownie points, a lot of points in the eyes of David. So David is sending messengers when he was told that this is the story, that the people of Yavesh Gilad took the body and buried it. So he sent messengers to the city of Yavesh Gilad, and he told them, God bless you. God bruchim atem laHashem. God bless you that you did this charitable act, that you performed this charitable act with your master, with Shaul, v'tikberut, and you buried him. And just like once someone is doing a charitable act with a deceased, that deceased obviously can never repay because they're no longer here. So David is telling them what is the blessing, and God from now on is going to do justice and truth with you. Is going to provide chesed to you, but that chesed is truly belonging to you because you did the right thing. And not only that, the people of Yavesh Gilad got into trouble originally with the neighbors because they are border city. So now that there is no king in the land of Israel, it's very easy, the border city is again going to be under attack and under trouble. So David is telling him, and I am also, even though I'm sitting in Hebron, which is on the other side of the Jordan River and much south of where you are, but don't worry, I'm going, because you respected Saul so much, I'm going to repay you just like God repays you, and I'm going to protect you. I'm going to give you a return a favor, because you buried Saul. And now he's telling them, listen, it's not only that I'm going to help you, you have to help yourself. As we mentioned last time during the eulogy, part of the eulogy of David to Saul was to basically break the news to the Jewish people that they're not going to live on pure miracles anymore, and they have to take care of the natural, b'derech hateva. They have to do whatever they can to protect themselves, and therefore they have to build a good army. So he told the people of Yavesh Gilad, you too, I'll help you, but you have to really build your army, build a platoon soldiers that will be able to protect you. Saul, because Saul is died, and and I indeed became a king. I became a king to the people of the house of Judah, not all the Jewish people yet. And I will help you, but you got to help yourself as well. Okay, so that is so now David is basically ruling over the city of Hebron and the tribe of Yehudah, and the city and the surrounding city of Hebron, around Hebron, and he's the king of Yehudah. At the same time, what happened? Ve'avner bener sar tzava asher leShaul. So an individual which we met several times before, the uncle of Saul, who was his chief of staff, he was his the head of the army. He was also a very big Talmid Chacham. He knew a lot, and he knew that bracha that Yaakov received from the angel, and he felt that, okay, so king number one for Binyamin was Saul, and the blessing was that there will be multiple kings coming out of Saul, out of the tribe of Binyamin. So the next one is let's take Ishbosheth. So he took the son of Saul, his name was Ishbosheth, and he made him the king, Vayavireo Machanaim, and he brought him to the city of Machanaim and made him a king. Vayamlicheu. Now, what happens here is that happened at least few days after David became a king, because it took some time to recover from that great defeat in the north. You know, everybody, the army was falling apart, and the king is dead, and his sons are dead. So it took some time. David didn't take him that much time because he was just coming in without a fight, right? So a few days later, Ishbosheth is being established as a competing king. Now, when he was established as a competing king, it happened in slowly, in bits and pieces, in stages. And after he became the king in Machanaim, in that one city, Avner Bener continued to push and to promote Ishbosheth as a new king. And slowly he took him, Vayamlicheu ala Gilad, so he took him and made him a king over the Gilad, which is where those people of Yavesh Gilad were, right? Ve'el Ashuri, ve'el Israel, ve'el Ephraim, ve'el Binyamin, ve'el Israel kula. Slowly but surely, he was, he asserted his control over the entire land of Israel, with the exception of Hebron. David, in the meantime, sitting there in the city of Hebron, and has the ability, has the tribe of Yehudah, but he chooses not to fight. He chooses not to challenge Ishbosheth, and he just remains in his own, just have his own small little kingdom of a city and a half. Now, Ishbosheth was one of the younger sons. I think might have been the youngest. I forgot now. But he was 40 years, ben 40 shana, when he became Ishbosheth ben Shaul ben Mulchol Israel. When he became king, he was 40 years a king. ושתיים שנים מלך את אח בית יהודה היו אחרי דוד. ושנתיים שנים מלך, so, and he was a king for 2 years, only for 2 years, and he was, as we said before, eventually asserted throughout the 2 years, slowly but surely asserted control over the land of Israel, with the exception of Bet Yehudah היו אחרי David. The house of Judah were supporting David. ויהי מספר הימים אשר היה דוד מלך בחברון, and how long David was ruling in the city of Hebron, 7 years ושישה חודשים, 7.5 years. So he was 7 years in Hebron, but Shaul was only 2 years. So what happened with the 5.5 years? It seems like and this is a big question, and there is a big controversy. What happened with the 5.5 years? So if Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, was king for 2 years, and David was king for 7.5 years, so there is 5.5 years that Saul is not a king, but on the other hand, we're saying that David is also a king only on the local tribe. Is not a king in Israel as well. So there are two opinions as to what happened. So someone, the Radak, I believe, is saying that that for 5.5 years, the rest of the Jewish people, other than the tribe of Judah, did not have a king. That Ishbosheth was a king for 2 years, and for the rest of the time there was no king. The Malbim says that there was a king, but it was a challenged king. So what happens is that 2 years there was total peace between the house of David and the house of Saul, where the son of Saul was a king for 2 years, and David did not do anything. But for 5 years there was a disagreement with them as to who needs to be a king, and so it wasn't Ishbosheth was challenged king, so it's not considered as if he was a king altogether. And so imagine what's going on here. We have the land of Israel, 2 kings, and they are related because David was the brother-in-law essentially of Ishbosheth, right? He married his sister, and it's a bit uncomfortable and chaotic, which unfortunately is going to be the case for a long time from this point on and off. So at that point, after in the beginning of the 2 years, I guess, of the son of Saul being a king, so Avner ben Ner establishes him. He moves him from Machanaim, which is on the other side of the Jordan River. He moved him to the center near Givon, near Yerushalayim, to be where basically the capital city was when Saul was around. Vayetze Avner ben Ner ve'avdei Ishbosheth ben Shaul u'mechanaim Givona. So they were there. They were moving their establishment to Givon. Okay, so now they're making a move because they want to. Givon is adjacent to the tribe of Judah, and Judah are the people that did not capitulate and did not agree to live under the ruling of Ishbosheth. And now Yoav ben Tzruya, so now Avner ben Ner, which is the head of the army of Ishbosheth now, move him to Givon. And but David also have his own chief of staff, his own head of the army, and that guy is his name is Yoav ben Tzruya. Okay, who was Tzruya? Tzruya is a woman. It was the sister of David. So Yoav was basically the nephew of David. And so Yoav ben Tzruya was he was very loyal. He was family. He was a nephew. And he was the person who was running the show in the army of David. Now, what happened? 1 second.
Hi, Ash. How are you?
1 second. All right. So Yoav ben Tzruya and the other servants of David somehow are establishing some sort of a meeting, or they fall on a meeting between the soldiers that belong to David and the soldiers that belong to Saul. And I see the rabbi is here, so it's really a new subject. So we're gonna